It is absolutely 100% impossible to guarantee civil rights protections to every single marginalized group. I have talked about this time and time again. If you follow my channel, you'll know I often say the more we try to protect every community, the more we actually break down those protections. Here we have a really interesting story. UC Berkeley campus senator abstains from a vote. Now students want her out. Essentially, I believe this, she's religious. I believe she's Christian. And because of that, she does not want to recognize more than two genders. Why? Because according to Genesis, God created Adam and from his rib created Eve. It is part of the creation story in the Bible, a religious belief in the Old Testament, which exists among the Jewish people, and a form of it exists inside Islam, that they believe God created man and then created woman. Therefore, the belief in more than two genders is at odds with this religion. However, civil rights protection is granted to those based on their gender identity, as well as religion, among many other things like age, national origin, gender, whatever. The issue then becomes, if you say this person has a right to exist as they see fit, their identity, they choose, then what about the person who has a right to believe what they want? Can you tell the person who is who follows an Abrahamic faith, they must believe in more than two genders? You can't tell them that. You can't make them communicate in a way that would violate their beliefs. That would be a violation of their human rights protections. At the same time, is it a violation of the trans person human rights protections if you refuse to recognize their identity? This is the problem with trying to encompass everything when some things are at odds with each other. Let's read the story. So this is from the SF Chronicle. A student senator at UC Berkeley abstained from a vote supporting transgender rights last week, then took a moment to explain her thinking. Now, more than 1,000 people have signed a petition demanding that she resign from student government or face a recall. Hundreds packed a Senate meeting Wednesday night to insist that she go on social media. Students labeled her a horrible person. Insist that she go. On social media, students labeled her a horrible person and a mental imbecile. Her campus political party severed ties with her. And the Daily Californian, UC Berkeley's storied student newspaper, ran an editorial critical of her statements and refused to publish her written defense. The uproar began on October 31st when the Queer Alliance Resource Center asked the Student Senate to pass a bill condemning the Trump administration for considering a legal definition of gender that would require it to match a person's sex at birth. The proposal would change the federal Title IX civil rights law and potentially remove its protections from 1.4 million transgender people. According to a New York Times story last month, based on a leaked memo, at UC Berkeley, the students' resolution also urged the university to step up support for transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming students and the campus groups that help them. Isabella Chow, 20, abstained. Reading a 5-paragraph statement explaining her decision, Chow told her 18 fellow senators, who all voted for the bill, another was absent, that discrimination is never okay. She condemned bullies and bigots. She said she abhorred stereotypes and she called the LGBT community valid and loved. That said, Chow continued, voting for the bill would compromise her values and force her to promote groups and identities she disagrees with. She said, as a Christian, she personally does not believe that certain acts and lifestyles conflict with what is good, right, and true, she said. She goes on, she believes that God created male and female at the beginning of time and designed sex for marriage between one man and one woman. For her to love another person does not mean that she would silently concur with them. At the bottom of her heart, she does not believe that your choices are right or the best for you as an individual. Chow's politely worded explanation has set in motion something different from the ideological debate over free speech that engulfed UC Berkeley last year, as left and right battled over whose speech was more worthy of protection. Here's the thing. California, a human rights law protects religion. Many people on the left often run to the defense of Islam, but not Christianity. They're both Abrahamic religions. And my understanding is that within Islam, they still have the Genesis story with Adam. I don't think it's identical, but they still have, God created Adam and they created his wife. His wife wasn't Eve. I think it's, what is it? Hawa. I am not an expert on Islam. I actually went to Catholic school for a little while, so I know a decent amount about Christianity. Islam, I don't. But what I can say is, it's interesting to me how the left will often run to the defense of Islam, but not Christianity. They're both Abrahamic religions, and religion is a protected class. You have a right, you can't be discriminated against based on your religion. Therefore, you can't tell someone they have to believe in something or respect someone if it violates their religion. It becomes extremely complicated. We go back to that story about the baker, right? My opinion is, listen, I've talked about this before. If you're going to participate in public, then participate in public. But there's nuance here because many people argued, the baker in Colorado was asked to do a custom cake as opposed to what he was actually just selling, and it's different then. So here, I think there's a big issue. They're coming after her because of her beliefs. She didn't say any hate speech. She just said, I personally don't believe and don't agree with what you're doing. And if that's true, doesn't she have a right to believe that? And wouldn't this be, by coming after her and forcing her to resign or trying to get her to resign, wouldn't that be discrimination based on her religious beliefs? Which group is more deserving of protection? The law can't differentiate because the law isn't going to place one over the other. The law puts them all on equal footing. You are protected based on all of these things. They say this is more personal. This is more personal, raising questions of whether judging one's gender identity is the same as judging one's race or ethnicity. And there is no more likely epicenter for that sort of debate than UC Berkeley, where student action on civil rights, from free speech to sexual assault and harassment, is part of the campus culture. Now the debate centers on the Associated Students of the University of California, an autonomous 131-year-old governing board that manages a $1.5 million budget and meets weekly to set student policies. The 20 senators each represent a large swath of the student body. Chow, who has a staff of 28, was elected with support from Christian students and the publications and media community involved with journals, magazines, and Cal TV. She could have merely abstained, said Reagan Putnam, president of the Queer Alliance Resource Center, but she took it upon herself to go into this long dialogue, talking about marriage between a man and a woman and shrouding hate in love. Nobody asked her to explain her vote. Nobody who voted yes had to explain their vote. Within hours, Chow's political party, Student Action, cut ties with her. So did Cal TV and her publication's constituents. A Daily Cal editorial called her statements offensive and declared, UC Berkeley students cannot allow and accept leaders like Chow to make decisions on their behalf. Well, what they're basically saying is that some people are worthy of civil rights protection and some people are not. In this instance, severing ties with her, calling her out, sounds to me like you're discriminating against her based on her religious beliefs. And you have to recognize that Islam holds many of the same beliefs. Where is the calling out of them? It's very selective that they're coming after Christians. We hear people talk about the evangelical right, but then also come to the defense of Islam because they feel that one group is being persecuted, yet both groups kind of believe a lot of the same things. The paper also rebuffed Chow's attempt to further explain her views in its pages. In her rejection letter, opinion editor Cheyenne Hendricks said the paper wouldn't run Chow's comments because her submission reflected her earlier statements, which utilized rhetoric that is homophobic and transphobic by the Daily Cal's standards. Could I then say that this is Christophobic? They want to say Islamophobic. Is it Abraphobic? You are refusing to listen and hear out the words of someone based on their Abrahamic beliefs? Chow, a junior majoring in business administration and music, said she feels frustrated and sad that Berkeley students are forced to live in a bubble, and we have to protect ourselves from anything that a vocal population deems to be offensive. She said she's been surprised by the onslaught. I go to classes and people are looking at me. I've been painted in such a negative light. Everybody's talking about it. No matter how much I tried to say I can love you and still disagree with you, people still interpret my disagreement with being a bigot and a hater. And I'd have to say they are. They are, because she's the one who flat out said, I can love you but disagree with you, and they're the ones who trying to push her away and ruin her career, college career. At Wednesday night's jam-packed Senate meeting, where all non-Chow business was set aside, students made clear that disagreeing with a person's essence is the definition of bigotry. And for 3 hours until shortly before midnight, they took the microphone one by one to tell her so, as Chow sat stony-faced beneath a huge banner reading, Senator Chow, resign now. Imagine if someone wanted to speak up in defense of trans rights, and everyone came at them and said, you must resign because you're a crazy person. That would not be okay, and most people would say that's not okay, and thus this is the big problem with the idea of hate speech. The idea that some people are ripe for targeting like Chow and others aren't. Who makes the decision? Right? You're saying that Chow, who is of a protected class, her religion, you're allowed to target her because of her religion and her beliefs, yet when she speaks up, you think she's the bad person. This is why hate speech laws don't make sense, and this is why the more we try to protect every single group, the less we're actually protecting those groups. If we want to say that religion is protected, then you have to respect Chow when she says she's not going to agree with you on how you view your identity and how you think who you think you are, because her beliefs are at odds with that. So it won't be reflected in how she sets policy or how she votes. So what do you do? At some point, we're going to start seeing more and more of these conflicts. These things are, you can't take someone who's religious and doesn't believe in non-binary and these things and have them be a part of the same community that does. It just doesn't work, and this is what you see. They end by saying, oh, there's more. There's a bunch more. I'll just get to the end. She said, "No, I'm not planning to resign," Chow told the Chronicle the morning after the marathon criticism session. "Because if I do, there will be no one else to represent the voices that are ignored and misunderstood on campus." It's really funny that you can take her and replace her with a trans person. 20 years ago, where everyone will be saying, you need to quit, you're wrong, there's only two genders, and now because the majority is opposed to her, she's the bad guy. Thus, I'll say it one more time before signing off, the more we expand these protections, you can't protect everyone when members of these protected communities actually disagree with the worldview of each other. It ends up in these situations that can't be solved. Anyway, stick around. I've got one more video coming up in just a few minutes on this channel.